A sharp crack split the calm surface of the Hogwarts lake, echoing across the quiet grounds like a warning. The night air trembled, carrying a strange electricity that raised the hair on the student's arms. A swirling vortex of light appeared above the water, twisting and churning with colors no one could name. It wasn't magic any of the professors had ever seen. Not a spell, not a charm, something entirely foreign, as if the very fabric of reality had been punctured. From that twisting rift, a figure fell. He hit the surface of the lake with a colossal splash, sending waves surging toward the shore. The figure emerged, gasping and soaked, his round head glinting in the moonlight, black dot eyes wide with confusion. A small bright blue backpack clung to his thin, black-lined body. His limbs stretched and recoiled as he shook off the water like rubber, an unnatural, almost impossible movement. Students who had gathered along the shore froze. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is that a student? No, he's a pirate? Look at him. He's stretching. A mixture of fear, awe, and curiosity rippled through the crowd. Some backed away, hands on wands, uncertain if this newcomer was friend or foe. Others leaned in, unable to tear their eyes away. Luffy blinked at the towering castle, tilting his head. Whoa, where am I? His voice carried across the lake, light and unafraid, but every word struck like a pebble in still water. His gaze darted between the students, the turrets, and the moonlit towers, brimming with questions he didn't yet know how to ask. Is this magic? Kind of like a devil fruit? At the edge of the gathering, Dumbledore observed silently, his hands clasped behind his back, eyes hidden behind the glint of his half-moon spectacles. No ordinary student could have survived that fall. No ordinary being could move like that. A pirate, or something much stranger, had arrived in his world. And yet, Dumbledore's calm, deliberate gaze betrayed a flicker of intrigue. Hermione Granger stepped forward, curiosity winning over caution. What are you? She asked, voice steady but cautious. This is Hogwarts. You shouldn't be here. Luffy tilted his head, his smile slow but genuine. I'm Luffy. Monkey D. Luffy. And, I don't know. I was on the sea. Then I fell. He gestured vaguely at the vortex, as if the portal itself could explain what had happened. I think I'm somewhere else. Different. Weird. Some students whispered in panic, but others, mostly Gryffindors, were already edging closer, drawn by his energy. Even from a distance, his joy was infectious. But Draco Malfoy, leaning against a tree with crossed arms and a sneer, frowned. A pirate? In our school? This isn't some circus. We should tell someone before he causes trouble. But Luffy didn't wait for permission. His curiosity was endless. He stretched an arm and plucked a floating leaf from the lake midair, examining it with fascination. Whoa, it floats. Kind of like water-breathing magic or something, huh? Cool. The tension crackled in the air. On one side there was wonder and admiration. On the other, fear and distrust. Wizards whispered about the unknown. This stranger wasn't just a visitor. He was different. Dangerous. Potentially unstoppable. Yet somehow, not threatening. Not yet. Then came the first turning point. A smaller student, unable to contain their fear, pointed their wand at Luffy. Stupefy, they shouted. The spell shot forward, a streak of light meant to immobilize. But Luffy, without thinking, stretched backward, his body elongating like liquid rubber. The spell struck the lake instead, sending sparks into the air, the water hissing where magic meant something it didn't understand. The students gasped. The impossible was real. Luffy hadn't just dodged magic. He'd reshaped it without effort. And yet, he only blinked, confused. Huh? That didn't hit me. His smile returned. Neat. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly. He had seen strange things in his time. impossible things. But this was beyond any magic he had encountered. Something from another world had arrived, and Hogwarts would never be the same. And then, in the distance, a dark ripple in the lake's surface hinted at something else stirring beneath. Something watching, something ancient. Luffy tilted his head toward it, sensing more than seeing. For the first time, a shadow of uncertainty crossed his face. Heh, I wonder what that's about. The camera would linger on that shadow, the portal still twisting in the sky, the students frozen in a mixture of fear and awe, and Luffy standing at the edge of a world he didn't yet understand. Hogwarts had received a visitor unlike any other, but what had followed him through the portal? And was Luffy truly ready for the mysteries and dangers lurking in the waters of this magical world? The morning sun bathed Hogwarts in pale gold, but the calm of the castle grounds was shattered by the ripple of yesterday's incident. Students gathered in whispered clusters, faces pressed together, eyes darting toward the spot where Luffy had appeared. Some gawked in wonder, others murmured warnings. Who, or what, was this rubber-bodied intruder who fell from the sky like a storm no one could predict? At the heart of the commotion, Luffy sat cross-legged on the edge of the lake, dangling his feet in the water. His small bright blue backpack bobbed behind him. He was humming a tune, completely unbothered by the dozens of startled students surrounding him. A stray wand levitated in the air for a moment before a Gryffindor student shouted in alarm, sending it clattering back to the ground. Luffy barely noticed. He stretched one arm effortlessly to pluck an apple from a nearby cart, laughing as it bounced off his palm and into his mouth. "I'm telling you, he's dangerous," whispered a Hufflepuff. "No normal student can move like that." "Maybe he's just different," another replied cautiously. "But look at him. He's happy, carefree." The debate escalated into a heated argument as more students joined in. Some argued for reporting him immediately to the ministry. Others urged patience, intrigued by the novelty of a being so unlike anything in their textbooks or histories. In the shadows, Draco Malfoy's sharp gaze never wavered. He leaned against a tree, lips curling into a calculated smirk. "Curious, isn't it? Everyone thinks he's a threat. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But either way, he's not from here. That alone makes him useful." Meanwhile, Harry and Hermione approached cautiously, their wands drawn but not raised aggressively. "We need to talk to him," Hermione whispered. "If he's dangerous, we need to understand what he can do before anyone else gets hurt." Luffy looked up as they neared, eyes wide and unguarded. "Hi, I'm Luffy. What's your name?" he asked, tilting his head in innocent curiosity. "I'm Harry, and this is Hermione," Harry said, keeping his voice calm but authoritative. "You can't just show up here and do whatever you want." Luffy scratched the back of his head, his body stretching slightly in reflex. "Oh, I didn't know I couldn't," he said cheerfully. "I just came here by accident. I fell through a weird glowing hole, and now I'm here." Hermione frowned, eyes narrowing as she processed his words. "A portal? That explains the lake, but it doesn't explain you." She gestured toward his elastic limbs. "How are you like that?" Luffy grinned. "I ate something called a devil fruit. It makes my body stretchy. Pretty neat, huh?" He raised an arm and stretched it across the lake like a living bridge, plucking another apple from a cart several meters away without moving from his seat. Students gasped. Some backed away in alarm. Others leaned closer, mesmerized. Harry's brow furrowed. "We've faced magic before. Spells, curses, enchanted objects. But nothing moves like that. It's not magic exactly, but it's not science either." Draco stepped forward from his hiding place, voice dripping with suspicion. "He's playing with everyone. Watch how easily he bends the rules of reality." That's the kind of power you don't ignore. Luffy, oblivious to the tension he was stirring, noticed a group of students trying to race their brooms across the lake. Without thinking, he stretched his legs and kicked one of the brooms skyward like it was a toy. The rider tumbled into the water with a startled shriek. Luffy clapped his hands in delight. Whoa, that's fun! Hermione's wand twitched, ready to intervene. Luffy, that's reckless, she scolded. But before she could act further, something shifted. The air above the lake shimmered again. The residual energy of the portal seemed to pulse in response to Luffy's movements. The water roiled, sending small waves toward the shore. Students froze, realizing that Luffy hadn't just fallen through the portal. He had triggered a resonance with whatever had brought him here. Harry stepped closer to Luffy, placing a hand on his shoulder. Listen, you might not mean harm, but you don't understand what you're dealing with. There are things in this world, dark things, that will see you as a weapon, not a guest. Luffy's smile faltered for the first time. His carefree energy dimmed slightly as he tilted his head toward the shimmering air. Dark things? Huh, I didn't know. From the edge of the castle, shadows seemed to stir unnaturally. Something alive and calculating, watched the lake intently. Whatever it was, it had sensed Luffy's arrival and reacted. The realization hit the students at once. Luffy's presence wasn't just a curiosity or a spectacle. It was a beacon, and it had already drawn attention they couldn't yet understand. The wind picked up, carrying an icy whisper across the lake. Luffy instinctively stretched his arms in a playful stance, ready for anything, but even he could sense the gravity of the moment. Hogwarts had never faced something like him, and he had never faced a world like Hogwarts. And somewhere beyond the castle walls, unseen and patient, a presence stirred, watching Luffy, the students, and the magic itself. Whatever it was, it had recognized him, and it wasn't pleased. The corridors of Hogwarts were alive with whispered speculation. By the time the morning bell rang, the rumor of a rubber pirate had spread through every common room and corridor. But it wasn't the halls that drew attention now. It was the classroom. Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration Room, usually orderly and precise, was about to host an event that no wizard, no matter how seasoned, could have predicted. Luffy sat on a desk, legs swinging, backpack bouncing slightly as he tried to focus on the lesson. Okay, so you just point the wand and boom? He asked, turning to the nearest student. It's like stretching your arm to grab something, right? Hermione's jaw tightened, her mind racing. No, Luffy, it's not that simple. You need control, intent, focus. I'm focusing, Luffy said, stretching his arm to touch a floating textbook across the room. The book flipped end over end, landing neatly in his hands. See? McGonagall's sharp eyes narrowed. She adjusted her spectacles and tapped her wand against the desk. Control? Intent? This is not a toy. Luffy blinked, tilting his head. I'm not a toy. I'm trying. The classroom erupted. Some students gawked in amazement. Others exchanged suspicious glances, whispering behind hands. A group of Slytherins, led by a scheming pansy Parkinson, exchanged smirks. Let's see how clever he really is, one whispered. They began whispering their own plans, plotting small magical tests to gauge his limits, to see how far his strange powers could bend the rules of the classroom. Professor Snape, leaning against the back wall with folded arms, observed silently. His expression betrayed nothing, yet his dark eyes followed every movement of Luffy's elastic limbs. There was something interesting about this child, something that didn't fit the normal spectrum of magical aptitude. He made a note to watch, silently intrigued, if only to understand whether this anomaly could be studied or exploited. Meanwhile, Luffy had begun improvising. When a levitation charm misfired, sending a cauldron spinning dangerously, He caught it mid-air, stretched it into the proper position, and set it down with a triumphant grin. The class froze. Even McGonagall, whose patience had worn thin, blinked in disbelief. Remarkable, in an unorthodox way, she muttered under her breath, shaking her head. Harry leaned closer to Hermione. He's chaotic but creative. He's not just dodging magic. He's using it in ways no one here has thought of. Hermione frowned. Yes, but at what cost? If he keeps improvising like this, the entire balance of the class and the school could be disrupted. He doesn't understand rules or consequences. That moment marked the first turning point. Luffy, grinning from ear to ear, noticed a magical ink bottle rolling towards the edge of a table. Without hesitation, he stretched across the room, grabbed it with a flick of his arm, and tossed it like a ball to a student in the back. The bottle opened midair, splattering ink over an unsuspecting student's robes. The room erupted in chaos. Shouts, laughter, some outrage, some amusement. McGonagall slammed her hand down on the desk. Enough, she snapped. This is supposed to be an educational environment, not circus entertainment. But the revelation had already taken hold. Luffy's presence wasn't just disruptive. He was inventive. His untrained powers, though chaotic, were opening doors in magic that even the brightest students had never considered. Spells bounced differently around him, and even failed charms seemed to find new purpose when he interacted with them. From across the room, Draco whispered to Pansy, "He's clever, but unpredictable. That's dangerous. If the professors can't control him, we might have to." Even Harry felt it, a strange mixture of awe and unease. Here was someone who could bend rules without knowing them. Someone who could challenge the very structure of Hogwarts without trying to break it. It wasn't power alone. It was instinct, creativity, and an unyielding curiosity. By the end of the class, the students were both inspired and wary. Luffy's laughter still echoed off the stone walls as he stretched across tables, tossed quills into the air, and caught floating candles like they were balloons. But the shadow of unease lingered. One mistake, one miscalculation, and the same chaotic energy that had amused could just as easily destroy. As the class dismissed, McGonagall's stern gaze lingered on Luffy. "This is unprecedented," she murmured. "If he remains here, Hogwarts must adapt, or he will redefine it entirely." And just as Luffy bounded out of the classroom, waving cheerfully to his new classmates, the faint shimmer of a portal flickered in the corner of the room. No one else noticed it, not yet, but its presence was undeniable. A pulse of strange energy seemed to respond to Luffy's unusual abilities, like a heartbeat calling out to a kindred anomaly. Hogwarts had survived a single lesson with this stranger, but the portal's pulse hinted at a larger connection, one that could draw far more than a curious pirate into their world, and whatever waited beyond it was patient, aware, and growing restless. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the Hogwarts courtyard. Students lingered in clusters, whispering about the stranger whose presence had shaken the foundations of their school. But curiosity had given way to tension. A small misunderstanding, a misfired spell, a wandering broom, a startled owl, was about to ignite the first true confrontation between Luffy and the disciplined magic of Hogwarts. It began innocuously. A group of fourth-year students, led by a particularly ambitious Slytherin, attempted a controlled demonstration of their offensive charms. "We need to know what he can do," the leader muttered. "Better here than anywhere else." Wands lifted, spells flickering with practiced precision. Luffy, oblivious to the planning behind the gestures, was bouncing a stray quill in the air, stretching it between his hands like a rubber band. "Whoa, that's fun. Want to see how high it goes?" Without a thought, he launched the quill skyward. It twisted mid-flight, knocking the tip of a spell meant for him. The magic ricocheted unpredictably, startling both students and onlookers. A shield charm flashed and fizzled against Luffy's stretching arm, which had elongated to block the impact without even thinking. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Spells flew, students shouted, and Luffy laughed, delighted by the sudden fireworks of magic. Hermione pushed through the crowd, wand raised but cautious. "Stop! You're going to hurt someone!" she shouted, trying to interject reason. "Luffy, they're testing you, not trying to be cruel. Please don't make this worse." Luffy's black dot eyes sparkled with mischief. "Whoa, testing me? Cool. I like tests." He stretched across the courtyard, snatching a flying spell from the air and bouncing it like a ball. The onlookers gasped. Some were impressed, some terrified. Harry stepped forward, gripping his wand tightly. "Everyone hold back. Don't provoke him. He doesn't even know what's going on." But it was too late. The duel had begun in earnest, not as a fight born of malice, but as a collision of worlds with conflicting instincts. The student's spells collided with Luffy's rubber-like body. Fireballs and lightning charms struck, only to rebound harmlessly or be deflected by his elastic arms. Each attack felt like a puzzle to Luffy, who solved it with an instinctive fluidity that resembled Haki, anticipation and perception guiding his movements. He wasn't just dodging, he was adapting, reacting before the danger fully formed. Draco watched from a distance, lips curling into a smirk. "I told you, there's more to him than meets the eye." The courtyard's chaos escalated. A levitation charm sent a crate tumbling toward a group of students, and Luffy lunged, stretching his arm in a single motion to catch it mid-air and toss it safely aside. A cheer erupted from some Gryffindors, but the Slytherins regrouped, hissing in frustration. They weren't used to having their precise magic countered so effortlessly by someone who didn't even look like a threat. McGonagall arrived, eyes blazing, wand raised. "Enough!" she bellowed. "This is not a duel. It is madness." Luffy froze for a fraction of a second, tilting his head. Madness? Nah, this is fun. His innocent enthusiasm only fueled the student's unease. He didn't fight to dominate. He fought because it was instinctive, playful, and exhilarating. The turning point came when a sixth-year Ravenclaw, attempting a more complex charm, inadvertently conjured a series of levitating daggers. They spun toward Luffy with deadly precision. For the first time, he paused, not in fear, but in thought. He focused, his movements sharper, more deliberate. Using a combination of stretches, bounces, and instinctive timing, he deflected each dagger. The courtyard fell silent for a heartbeat. Even McGonagall blinked, momentarily speechless. Snape's dark eyes, hidden beneath shadowed lids, glimmered with recognition. There was a method to Luffy's chaos, a kind of preternatural instinct that mimicked mastery of magical timing without ever learning it. Hermione, trying again to calm the escalating tension, stepped forward. "Luffy, please, you're impressing them, but you're also escalating this. We need to stop before someone really gets hurt." But the warning came too late. A stray bolt of magic struck the ground near Luffy's feet, the force creating a shockwave. His body stretched instinctively, absorbing the impact, and the force rebounded outward, knocking wands askew and sending students tumbling. The courtyard had become a live battlefield of controlled magic versus unpredictable power, and no one could contain the energy completely. Harry's voice rang out, filled with urgency. "This isn't about right or wrong. This is about survival, yours and theirs." Luffy grinned, black dot eyes sparkling. "Whoa, you guys are strong." He bounced lightly from one foot to the other, ready for the next attack, laughing as if the chaos were the most natural thing in the world. From the shadows, an unfamiliar shimmer pulsed faintly, responding to the collision of forces. The portal above the lake, the one that had brought Luffy here, flickered in resonance. Something was stirring, sensing the first real clash of worlds, and waiting. Hogwarts had witnessed powers beyond their understanding, forces that defied their finest magic. But as Luffy's instinctive might clashed with disciplined spell work, a deeper, unseen danger stirred, something ancient and patient, drawn by the anomaly of the rubber pirate. Could Hogwarts contain him? Or would the next clash be far more devastating? By midday, the rumors of Luffy's arrival had spread like wildfire throughout Hogwarts. Every corridor, classroom, and common room buzzed with speculation. Students spoke in hushed tones about the elastic stranger who had bested spells, deflected charms, and turned chaos into an almost artistic display. The word interdimensional had started creeping into conversations, whispered cautiously, as if saying it too loudly might make it true. In the staff room, Dumbledore reclined in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. The calm he projected masked a storm of questions. How had a being from another world, with powers unlike any known magic, slipped through the fabric of reality and landed on his grounds? And more importantly, what did it mean for the balance of power in the wizarding world? Ministerial oversight, he murmured softly, speaking into the enchanted communicator that linked him to the Ministry of Magic. They must be informed, but cautiously. This is unprecedented. His voice carried weight, calm yet tinged with urgency. We cannot treat this as a mere visitor. The implications are far broader than any one department can comprehend. Meanwhile, on the castle grounds, Hagrid lumbered toward the lake, a wide smile splitting his face as he caught sight of Luffy stretching across the grass, playfully bouncing a floating log like a ball. "Ah, don't you look like a right handful? You do?" Hagrid chuckled, kneeling to pat Luffy on the shoulder. "I like ye, you know. Not many can make the world this much fun." Luffy grinned back, unaware of the larger implications. "Thanks. You're huge and friendly. I like you too." He stretched his arm to pluck a floating branch, twisting it like taffy, and tossed it back to Hagrid, who caught it with a delighted laugh. Their camaraderie was effortless, two beings who saw the world through entirely different lenses, but found joy in the simplest interactions. But not everyone shared Hagrid's enthusiasm. From a balcony overlooking the courtyard, Draco Malfoy watched with a calculating glare. He leaned against the stone railing, hands behind his back, eyes narrowed. A pirate with unknown abilities. A potential weapon, he muttered to himself. If anyone can't control him, then why shouldn't I? His mind raced, weighing alliances, leverage, and advantage. For Draco, Luffy was not merely a curiosity. He was an opportunity. Meanwhile, whispers of Luffy's abilities reached the farthest corners of Hogwarts. Students speculated about the nature of his powers. Some thought of him as a magical anomaly. Others likened him to a long-lost champion from a forgotten legend. Yet with each retelling, the tension grew. Could a being like this disrupt the delicate equilibrium of the school? Could Hogwarts' centuries of structure and discipline withstand someone whose instincts defied every known rule? In the Great Hall, students watched Luffy casually bounce through the tables, retrieving apples, laughing, and stretching in ways that seemed impossible. Hermione sat with Harry, frowning, her fingers tapping her wand nervously. "He's amazing," she whispered, "but uncontrolled. He doesn't understand boundaries, and neither do his instincts. If anyone tries to manipulate him, or if he missteps..." She didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Luffy, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents, had begun experimenting with his powers near the lake. He stretched across several boulders, flipped in midair, and caught falling water from a fountain, tossing it high like a juggling act. Yet every movement, every playful gesture, sent ripples through the magical environment. Spells warped slightly around him, charms faltered and bent as though reacting to some unseen force. Students watching whispered about potential, talent, and danger, all in the same breath. Dumbledore's voice, calm but firm, broke through the murmurs. "We must consider both the threat and the opportunity he presents. The Ministry must see reason, and we must observe closely. This interloper may be more than a guest. He may be a key." The turning point came as a stray enchanted broom, knocked loose by Luffy's stretching arm, collided with a protective charm, creating a small explosion of sparks and light. Students scattered, some cheering, others shielding their eyes. Luffy landed lightly, black dot eyes shining with excitement. Whoa, did you see that? That was awesome. McGonagall appeared at the edge of the courtyard, her robes billowing as she approached. I will not have this school turned into a playground for whatever this is, she barked. Yet even she could not hide a flicker of intrigue as she watched Luffy manipulate the laws of magic instinctively, effortlessly, bending reality without fully understanding it. From the shadows of the castle walls, Draco's gaze lingered, calculating, considering alliances in the next move. For the first time, the idea of a strategic partnership with a being like Luffy crossed his mind. But could he control someone so unpredictable? Could anyone? As dusk approached, the wind shifted. The portal that had brought Luffy here shimmered faintly above the lake, reacting to his every movement, pulsing with energy. Hogwarts had grown aware of the stranger, and he had grown aware of the world he had fallen into. The question hung in the air, heavy and electric. Was Luffy a danger to be contained, or an opportunity to be seized? And somewhere beyond the castle, something ancient and patient had sensed the anomaly, stirring with intent. The next move would not be Luffy's alone, and Hogwarts would soon discover that curiosity can awaken forces far beyond imagination. By the following morning, the news of Luffy's arrival at Hogwarts had leapt beyond the castle walls, carried by whispers, enchanted messages, and enchanted owls. The wizarding world, long accustomed to peculiar events, now faced something entirely unprecedented. A being whose powers obeyed no known magical laws. A visitor from another reality whose very existence challenged centuries of understanding. In the Ministry of Magic, the Aurors and senior officials convened in a storm of debate. We cannot allow an uncontrolled anomaly to roam freely in Britain, barked a high-ranking official. It could destabilize the magical population if left unchecked. Observe first, countered another, calm but tense. This individual may be more of an opportunity than a threat. Capturing him blindly could provoke unforeseen consequences. Dumbledore's voice came through via a flu connection, calm and deliberate, yet carrying weight that silenced the room for a moment. Consider this carefully. The castle has its own defenses, and Hogwarts has handled extraordinary circumstances before. But this is unlike anything in our histories. He paused, letting the words settle. We must not act in haste, for there are forces we do not yet perceive. Meanwhile, across magical Britain, wizards in distant cities and secluded villages speculated on the nature of the anomaly. Some thought Luffy's powers might be a rare, undiscovered branch of magic, perhaps the work of a long-forgotten wandless spell, or an enchantment lost to time. Others, more imaginative, whispered of devil fruits, comparing the boy's abilities to tales of elemental transformations or mythical beasts. Theories ranged from the scientific to the fantastical, each more speculative than the last, yet none could fully explain what they had seen. In the wizarding press, enchanted newspapers printed sketches of Luffy, his elastic limbs, round head, and bright blue backpack. Headlines questioned whether this interdimensional pirate was a threat or a miracle. Letters poured into the ministry from concerned citizens, curious students, and even visiting witches from abroad, each offering advice, conjecture, or warnings. Back at Hogwarts, the effects of this attention were already visible. Students moved through corridors more cautiously, their eyes darting to the edges of the grounds, wondering if someone or something was coming to see the anomaly firsthand. Even the teachers felt it, a subtle shift in energy, a tension lingering in the air, as though the castle itself sensed the external gaze of powerful observers. Hagrid, meanwhile, continued to shadow Luffy, growing fond of the boy's infectious energy. "You've got a spirit, that's for sure," Hagrid said, laughing as Luffy bounced across the grass, catching a falling broom mid-flight. "You could be trouble, but good trouble, you know." Luffy grinned back, completely oblivious to the larger concerns swirling outside the castle walls. Not all reactions were benign. Draco Malfoy, always calculating, interpreted the attention differently. If the ministry is divided, if wizards abroad are uncertain, that gives me leverage, he muttered. He began planning subtle moves, whispers and alliances, aimed at using Luffy's presence to his advantage, fully aware that chaos could be a ladder. The turning point arrived in the late afternoon, when a delegation of Aurors arrived at Hogwarts under the guise of diplomacy. Their leader, a seasoned wizard, stepped forward, voice calm yet firm. "We are here to observe, and if necessary, intervene. Hogwarts must report any incident involving the anomaly directly to the Ministry. No exceptions." Luffy, stretched out on the grass and watching a flock of birds, didn't immediately react. When he finally turned, he gave a wide, innocent smile. "Whoa, so everyone knows about me now? Cool." His casual tone belied the tension, but his presence alone caused Aurors to exchange uneasy glances. This wasn't a student to be disciplined or a creature to be contained. This was something entirely new, unpredictable, and alive in a way that felt almost instinctual. Dumbledore, watching the exchange from afar, allowed himself a small, contemplative sigh. "Observation alone may not suffice," he murmured. "We are dealing with a force that perceives, adapts, and grows, faster than we can imagine. Hogwarts can shelter him for now, but Britain's magical order is already feeling the tremors." The wind stirred across the castle grounds, carrying the faint shimmer of the portal above the lake. It pulsed once, twice, as if resonating with the attention Luffy now commanded. The anomaly had not gone unnoticed by forces beyond Hogwarts. And somewhere, unseen and patient, eyes in another dimension, or perhaps another world entirely, had focused on him, calculating, assessing. The ripple of Luffy's arrival was spreading faster than anyone could contain. Authorities, rivals, and distant observers were all converging on a truth they barely understood. This boy was not just a visitor, he was a catalyst. And the question hung in the air, heavy and urgent. Would the wizarding world unite in response, or fracture under the weight of the unknown? Night fell over the Hogwarts like a velvet curtain, cloaking the castle in shadow and whisper. The corridors, normally echoing with the laughter and chatter of students, now carried a different tension, a quiet plotting, the careful dance of allegiances forming in corners unseen. Luffy, blissfully unaware of the intricacies around him, had retired to the edge of the forbidden forest, skipping stones across a pond with his elastic fingers. Yet his presence was a spark, and sparks rarely went unnoticed. In Gryffindor Tower, Harry and Hermione paced near the portrait hole, their faces etched with concern. "We can't just leave him to figure this out alone," Hermione whispered, voice tight with urgency. "He's incredible, but chaotic. He doesn't understand the rules here. Someone needs to guide him before something goes horribly wrong." Harry nodded, eyes fixed on the darkened grounds below. "I know, but mentorship isn't simple. He's not like anyone we've dealt with before. It's instinct, not magic. It's unpredictable. Still, maybe we can help him channel that." Meanwhile, in the shadows of Slytherin dungeons, Draco Malfoy smirked as he reviewed the scraps of intelligence he had gathered. The ripple of Luffy's abilities had reached even the most cautious corners of the castle. Some students feared him. Others were intrigued. Draco, ever calculating, saw opportunity. "Power like that doesn't belong to the weak or the timid," he murmured, fingers tapping against the cold stone. "And if I can't control him, someone else will. Why shouldn't it be me?" He reached for a small, enchanted mirror, a secret communication device, and whispered it into it. "I need guidance. There's a way to bend this anomaly to our advantage, and I intend to find it." Shadows within shadows stirred, dark energy responding to ambition. Draco's intentions were clear. For him, Luffy was not a friend, but a key, a tool to elevate himself above his peers. Back at the lake, Hagrid lingered nearby, muttering to himself as he watched Luffy play. You've got more energy than a thestral stampede, but you need someone to watch your back, don't you? Luffy laughed, stretching across a pair of trees to pluck a floating branch. I'm fine. I can handle anything. Yet the giant felt unease creeping in. Hogwarts had always had rules, protections, and now there was a force beyond his understanding, wandering freely. The turning point arrived in the quiet of the astronomy tower. Hermione had persuaded Harry to meet her in secret. They discussed strategies, how to engage Luffy, how to protect him, and how to prevent the wrong hands from exploiting him. We have to teach him restraint without stifling him, Hermione said. He'll need guidance, not chains, but someone else might offer him chains first. Harry's jaw tightened. I know, and that's the danger. There are people watching, waiting to turn curiosity into control. He's too important. Too powerful for anyone to leave alone. Meanwhile, whispers echoed through other parts of the castle. Some students, quietly loyal to Gryffindor ideals, were drawn to Luffy's innocent bravery, plotting ways to support him subtly. They spoke in hushed tones about teaching him Hogwarts customs, showing him the boundaries without breaking his spirit. Yet in the darker corners, alliances formed with less noble intentions. Some aimed to test his limits, others to manipulate him, and a few, led by Draco, sought outright leverage, an interdimensional weapon in human form. Hagrid, sensing the undercurrents, let out a low grunt. You don't see it, do you? Some want to help you. Some want you for something else entirely. Watch who you trust, Luffy. But Luffy, oblivious, tossed a small pebble high into the night air, catching it with a grin. Whoa, this is fun. So many friends. His innocent assumption that everyone shared his excitement made the underlying threat all the more dangerous. Those who sought to control him knew he would never suspect malice, yet their intentions were already shaping the choices he would soon face. As the night deepened, the portal above the lake shimmered faintly, reacting once more to Luffy's presence. It pulsed with an almost sentient awareness, a subtle warning that the anomaly he represented was far more significant than any student or professor could comprehend. Every alliance, every secret pact forming in the shadows, was now part of a larger pattern, threads weaving toward a future none could yet see. In the quiet of Hogwarts, Luffy slept unaware of the webs being spun around him. Friendships, rivalries, and secret pacts were converging, each with its own agenda. The question lingered in the night air. Who truly wanted his well-being, and who only craved his power? And beyond the castle, a distant watchful presence stirred, sensing the alliances and preparing to strike. The morning air in the Hogwarts dueling arena was sharp, crisp, and charged with anticipation. Students had gathered, whispering nervously about the strange pirate whose presence had already reshaped the balance of power within the castle. Today was not merely another lesson. It was a test, one that would reveal a truth few could have anticipated. Luffy stood in the center, arms loose at his sides, a carefree grin on his face. So, we're gonna spar for real? He asked, tilting his head, eyes glinting with curiosity. Okay, I love sparring. Across from him, Harry gripped his wand tightly, heart pounding with a mix of excitement and unease. He had seen Luffy dodge spells, deflect charms, and play with chaos, but he had never witnessed something like this. Instinct so sharp, so preemptive, it bordered on supernatural. Just don't underestimate him, Hermione whispered from the sidelines, voice tense. Whatever he is, he reacts before you even cast. The first spell erupted, a simple jinx meant to disarm. In a heartbeat, Luffy stretched, catching the spell mid-air with an elastic hand. The magical energy ricocheted, dispersing harmlessly against the stone walls. Murmurs swept through the watching students. Did you see that? One gasped. He predicted it. Even Professor McGonagall froze, eyebrows arched. She had faced powerful wizards, dueling champions, and enchanted beasts. But this was different. Luffy didn't just dodge or counter. He anticipated, adjusting his body and movements instinctively as though he could sense intent. Harry tried again, casting a more complex shield charm layered with counter jinxes. Luffy responded with a flick of his wrist and a stretch that sent Harry's spell sailing harmlessly into the stands. Whoa, that's tricky, Luffy laughed, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet. You almost got me? Hermione's frown deepened. He's not just fast. He senses the flow of magic itself. It's almost like he can read intentions before they form. From the sidelines, Snape observed with a mixture of fascination and calculation. Instinctive, adaptive, and remarkably efficient, he murmured under his breath. This is not merely reflex. It is perception, heightened beyond ordinary means. He may lack formal magical training, but he is already a master of anticipation. Draco, lurking in the shadows, whispered to himself, teeth clenched. So the rumors were true. This boy isn't just strong. He's untouchable unless you find a way to corner him. And if I can't... His voice trailed off as a plan formed in the back of his mind. The turning point came when Luffy faced a coordinated attack. A group of advanced duelists combined spells, stunning charms, hexes, and jinxes layered together in a rapid volley. The air crackled with magical energy, the stones beneath their feet vibrating from the force. For a split second, even Luffy's grin faltered. He focused, black dot eyes narrowing. Then, like a spring coiling before release, he moved. Arms and legs stretched with impossible precision, deflecting spells, intercepting curses, and disarming multiple opponents simultaneously. He didn't just survive. He turned their combined efforts into a display of chaotic artistry, bouncing spells harmlessly and redirecting energy with instinctual mastery. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Harry stumbled back, wand arm trembling. He's reacting to everything we do, before we do it. His mind raced, not just with fear, but with admiration. He had never faced a duel like this, and for the first time, he questioned not just Luffy's strength, but the very nature of power itself. McGonagall's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Enough. The duel was halted, but the aftershocks lingered. Stones were scorched, spells hung in the air, and the students' hearts raced from the display they had just witnessed. Even Hagrid, standing near the stands, let out a low whistle. Blimey, he's got something beyond magic. Can't teach that in any school. Luffy, still grinning, scratched the back of his head. Wow, that was fun. You guys are strong too. Innocent, unassuming. Yet every move he had made carried a precision that no ordinary student, or even teacher, could fully comprehend. The revelation had not gone unnoticed. Beyond Hogwarts, the portal above the lake shimmered faintly, reacting once again to Luffy's display of instinctive mastery. Something unseen stirred in response, ancient and watchful, drawn by the awakening of powers that transcended ordinary understanding. Hogwarts had seen a taste of what Luffy could do, and even the most skilled duelists had struggled to challenge him. But instinctive power is only the beginning. As night falls, the castle and the wider wizarding world must wonder, what are the true limits of this interdimensional stranger? And when those limits are tested, can Hogwarts survive what comes next? Night had fallen over Hogwarts, and a cool mist curled through the ancient stone corridors. Luffy, drawn by insatiable curiosity, padded silently along the hallways, his small blue backpack bouncing lightly with each step. His black dot eyes glimmered with wonder as he caught glimpses of floating candles, moving suits of armor, and enchanted portraits that seemed to whisper secrets to each other. But it wasn't the ordinary wonders of Hogwarts that called to him tonight. It was the sense of something hidden, forbidden, and alive. I wonder what's behind that door, Luffy murmured, tilting his head at the massive oak that bore the sign, Forbidden Library. The wood seemed almost to pulse, an aura of warning radiating outward. Whoa, this looks special. Hermione, who had been trailing him at a cautious distance, reached the door first, placing a hand on the wood. Her face was tense. Luffy, you shouldn't. This section is protected for a reason. The books here, they contain magic that even trained wizards can barely handle. Luffy grinned, unconcerned. I can handle it. Come on, let's see what's inside. With a twist of the doorknob, and almost instinctively sensing the danger, Hermione cast a subtle protective charm to buffer the threshold. The door creaked open, revealing row upon row of ancient tomes, shelves stacked so high that the ceiling disappeared into shadow. The air smelled of parchment, ink, and the faint tang of long-forgotten spells. It was intoxicating. No sooner had Luffy stepped inside than the library itself seemed to stir. Books trembled on their shelves. A distant roar echoed from the farthest corner. Hermione's eyes widened. Luffy, wait. The enchantments here are alive. They protect themselves. A sudden gust of wind flung a pile of scrolls into the air. Luffy ducked and stretched, his body elongating to catch them all, laughing as the papers whirled around him like a playful storm. But not all was play. From the shadows emerged creatures of enchantment, animated guardians, part book, part magical beast, eyes glowing with arcane fire. They hissed, snapping and clawing toward him, sensing the intrusion. Hermione raised her wand, muttering a series of spells to calm the guardians. Luffy, you need to focus. Don't just react. Listen to me. But Luffy, instinctively agile, dodged, stretched, and bounced in ways that even Hermione hadn't anticipated. His movements had a rhythm that echoed the magic in the library itself. Untrained, unpredictable, but undeniably effective. The first major turning point came when Luffy's curiosity led him to a massive tome perched atop a high shelf. Stretching his arm like elastic, he plucked the book from its perch. A shockwave of magical energy radiated outward, triggering the library's full defense. Books swirled violently, enchanted quills launched themselves like missiles, and the guardians lunged with synchronized precision. Hermione grabbed Luffy's hand midair. We need to contain it. That book, whatever it is, it's reacting to you. Luffy blinked, a thrill running through him. Whoa, it's like it knows I'm here. Cool. He laughed, oblivious to the danger, and stretched to redirect the flying quills, batting them aside as if they were toys. From the shadows, the enchantments began to shift, their forms growing larger, more menacing. A particularly massive guardian, its body a swirl of ink and parchment, loomed over Luffy. Hermione's voice trembled slightly. This isn't just defense, it's a warning. If you aren't careful, the library will attack with everything it has. Yet, Luffy's instinctive mastery came to the fore. Just as the guardian lunged, he twisted his body, dodging mid-air and wrapping a long arm around a nearby shelf. The shelf pivoted, launching a wave of tomes toward the guardian. A crash echoed through the chamber as the guardian staggered, momentarily overwhelmed by the unpredictable chaos. Hermione exhaled, both impressed and terrified. He's surviving because he reads the flow of energy. Not spells, not magic. Energy itself. But that's also dangerous. If he misjudges. The turning point crystallized as Luffy opened the massive tome. Faint golden runes glowed on the pages, spreading like fire across the parchment. The air vibrated, resonating with potential power. Luffy's eyes shone brighter, a spark of comprehension, not of the spells themselves, but of the possibilities they represented. Yet, even as his mind opened to these new lessons, a subtle tremor ran through the library, a warning that power this ancient could not be contained by curiosity alone. Hagrid, having followed them silently, muttered from the doorway, "Careful, ye two. Some doors, even for the boldest, aren't meant to open so easy." Luffy's curiosity had awakened forces within the Forbidden Library, forces attuned to both danger and potential. Hogwarts watched silently as the ancient guardians readied themselves, the golden runes glowing ominously in the dim light. The question hung in the air, electric and heavy. Will Luffy's exploration unlock unimaginable power, or unleash a disaster no one can stop? Even as the night settled over Hogwarts, far beyond its towering spires and shimmering lake, darker forces stirred. News of the strange interdimensional visitor had leaked, carried on enchanted whispers, shadowed apparitions, and untraceable owl flights. Within hidden chambers and forgotten corners of the wizarding world, whispers of the pirate with powers beyond magic reached ears that had long hungered for dominance. In a dimly lit hall, flickering with candlelight and shadow, Voldemort's closest followers convened. The air was thick with tension, the acrid smell of black magic lingering as they debated fervently. This anomaly, one Death Eater hissed, could disrupt everything. Hogwarts is vulnerable. If he sides with them, we lose our advantage. Another voice, calmer but no less dangerous, interjected. Or he could be a tool. Imagine harnessing that power, a being whose instincts surpass magic itself. With guidance or coercion, he could turn the tide for us. The room erupted into heated argument. Fear clashed with ambition. Some whispered of containment and observation. Others, darker ideas of domination and exploitation. Luffy had no allegiance, no understanding of these dark forces, and yet, merely by existing, he had become a fulcrum for their plans. Back at Hogwarts, the castle sensed the looming storm. Dumbledore stood in the high tower, gaze fixed on the night sky where the portal shimmered faintly above the lake. "He is awakening," Dumbledore murmured, voice low but urgent. And with awakening comes attention. Not all of it, friendly. Harry, pacing the corridors, felt a strange unease, a premonition that the danger surrounding Luffy was not just external, but intimately tied to his presence. "He's attracting them," Harry said quietly to Hermione. "The dark wizards. They're coming, aren't they?" Hermione's eyes narrowed. "It's not just that. They're calculating, waiting. They don't know what he can do, yet, and they think they can control it." From a distant chamber, Draco Malfoy observed with a mixture of fear and opportunism. "Even they fear him," he muttered. "And yet, if I play this right, maybe I can profit from the chaos before anyone else even realizes what's happening." His mind raced, weaving possibilities, alliances, betrayals, all centered on Luffy's unpredictable presence. The tension escalated when a flock of enchanted ravens appeared above the lake, sending messages to hidden corners of Britain. Each bird carried warnings, some cloaked in misdirection, others laced with charm detection spells. Hagrid, peering out from the edge of the forbidden forest, muttered to himself, "Blimey, that boy's got attention from the worst sort already, and he doesn't even know it yet." Luffy, meanwhile, sat near the lake, tossing stones and stretching his limbs across the water like a rubber band, utterly unconcerned. Everyone's so serious. Why are they worried? But even his carefree energy radiated outward, sensed by forces attuned to power, instinct, and chaos. A turning point arrived when the portal above the lake flickered violently, almost as if reacting to the malice converging upon Hogwarts. A ripple of dark energy swept across the grounds, subtle but undeniable. Students shivered, and even the castle seemed to hum with awareness. Something had noticed Luffy, not merely as an anomaly, but as a beacon. Dumbledore's voice broke through the rising tension, carried magically to those gathered on the grounds. Hogwarts must prepare. He is not merely a student, nor merely a visitor. Forces beyond our comprehension are aware of him, and where they focus, danger follows. The emotional weight of the revelation pressed down on everyone present. Luffy, blissfully unaware, was the center of a storm he could neither perceive nor fully understand. Friendships and alliances within Hogwarts were about to be tested, not just against his powers, but against the calculated malice now converging from outside. Somewhere in the darkened halls of Britain, eyes unseen and malice ancient were turning toward Hogwarts. The question hung in the midnight air, heavy and urgent. Is Luffy a magnet for darkness he does not yet understand? And when that darkness strikes, can anyone, even the greatest wizards of Hogwarts, stand in his defense? The first light of dawn painted the castle's stone walls with pale gold, but inside Hogwarts, tensions were darker than ever. Luffy, the carefree pirate from another world, had begun to leave his mark, not just physically, but ideologically. Where rules were strict and tradition unyielding, his philosophy of freedom and instinct challenged everything students had been taught. In the Gryffindor common room, whispers turned to conversation, and conversation to action. "He's not like anyone we've ever met," one student said, pacing. "He doesn't follow rules, and yet he inspires us." Another nodded, eyes wide. "Exactly. He doesn't care about house points or punishment. He just acts. And somehow, it feels right." Harry, standing by the fireplace, ran a hand through his hair. He understood the allure. Luffy's morality was simple, direct, uncompromising. Do what you believe is right. Protect your friends. Challenge injustice. Yet Harry also saw the dangers. Hogwarts had structure for a reason. Chaos, no matter how noble, could have catastrophic consequences. Meanwhile, in the Slytherin common room, Draco and a group of ambitious students observed from the shadows, plotting. "Do you see what he's doing?" Draco sneered. "Gryffindors follow him blindly. That kind of influence can be harnessed, or it can be crushed." He leaned closer to his cohort, voice low and deliberate. "We either control it, or someone else will. And it won't be us. He's too valuable a variable to ignore." The ideological collision became unavoidable when Luffy, oblivious to the tension, strolled through the Great Hall, challenging the rigid schedule of lessons and curfews with unshakable innocence. "Why can't we have duels whenever we want?" he asked, voice echoing. "Isn't learning about strength fun if we try it ourselves?" Hermione, exasperated yet protective, stepped forward. "Luffy, Hogwarts isn't about fun alone. There are rules for safety, for discipline, for balance. You can't just..." "Rules are weird," Luffy interrupted, a shrug lifting his small backpack. "But I get it. Kinda. Still, I think we could try it my way, too." The Gryffindor students cheered, emboldened by his challenge to authority. The Slytherins bristled, seething at the disruption of order, feeling both fear and opportunity in the chaos he represented. This simple act, walking through the hallways, defying the schedule, laughing while doing it, sparked what would soon become the first stirrings of a student rebellion. The turning point came in the courtyard, where Luffy's playful antics unintentionally escalated the conflict. A practice duel with the Gryffindor group drew a crowd of students, curiosity transforming into enthusiasm. Others, particularly from Slytherin, attempted to intervene, but found themselves thwarted by Luffy's unpredictable abilities. He bent and stretched, dodged and deflected, turning every attack into a spectacle of creative mastery that blurred the lines between magic and instinctive power. Harry watched, torn between admiration and concern. "He's amazing," he murmured to Hermione. "But if this continues, discipline will break down. He doesn't just challenge rules. He undermines authority itself." Hermione nodded, worry etched across her face. "And the Slytherins. They won't just let it pass. This could escalate into something much bigger. We need to guide him, or Hogwarts might split apart before anyone realizes it." Even Dumbledore sensed the brewing storm. In his office, eyes thoughtful behind half-moon glasses, he whispered, "Force like this. It cannot be contained by tradition alone, yet to ignore it is dangerous. Morality, instinct, freedom, all converge in ways we have yet to understand." As the sun rose higher, students across the castle began to take sides. Gryffindors rallied behind Luffy, inspired by his fearless, instinct-driven philosophy. Slytherins, wary and opportunistic, plotted to bend or exploit the chaos for advantage. Friendships, loyalties, and rivalries were reshaping at a pace Hogwarts had never experienced. Luffy's ideals had struck a chord and a nerve within the walls of Hogwarts. As students whispered, plotted, and rallied, the question became clear. Can a pirate's free-spirited philosophy survive the rigid, centuries-old order of the school? And when the first confrontation of these clashing ideals arrives, will Hogwarts itself hold together or crumble from within? The dueling arena at Hogwarts was quiet but tense, the usual echoes of practice and laughter replaced by a heavy anticipation. Luffy stood at one end, hands casually resting on his hips, eyes bright and focused. Across from him, Harry gripped his wand, muscles tight, mind racing with conflicting emotions. Today was not just another duel. It was a test of instinct, of morality, and of trust. The students who had gathered around watched in silence, knowing that the clash they were about to witness would be unlike anything they had ever seen. Hermione whispered from the sidelines, her voice tense. "Harry, remember, he doesn't follow normal rules. He reacts differently. Don't underestimate him." Harry nodded, trying to steady his nerves. He had faced many opponents, Voldemort, Death Eaters, dangerous creatures. But Luffy was unique. His power was instinctive, unpredictable, and almost playful. Yet there was a depth of strategy in every movement. Every stretch, every bounce, seemed chaotic. But Harry sensed that each action carried purpose. The duel began with a flourish of spells. Harry cast a series of jinxes, precise and layered, intending to test Luffy's reflexes. The arena seemed to hold its breath as Luffy twisted and stretched, his elastic body deflecting curses with uncanny timing. Some spells ricocheted harmlessly off the stone walls. Others were subtly redirected to avoid harming anyone. "Whoa, that's clever," Luffy laughed, spinning mid-air to redirect a hex aimed at the stands. "You're strong, I like that." Harry hesitated, wand shaking slightly. He wanted to push harder, to challenge Luffy fully, but every instinct told him that brute force would not win here. Instead, he began adapting, layering spells in unexpected sequences. He combined charm and deception, testing Luffy's ability to predict intent rather than simply react to motion. The first major turning point came when Luffy extended his arms in a massive, sweeping arc, catching not only Harry's spell, but also several thrown objects from nearby students. In the blink of an eye, Luffy had turned their attacks into a chaotic but harmless display of skill. The audience gasped, not because Luffy was invincible, he wasn't, but because his instinctive creativity had outmaneuvered the most structured approach they had ever seen. Hermione's eyes widened. It's not just reflex. He reads the flow of energy, adapts in real time. It's incredible. Harry's expression was a mix of admiration and frustration. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Luffy wasn't just a formidable opponent. He was a friend. Someone whose moral code, simple, direct, and unflinching, challenged the very rules Harry had been raised to respect. Every attack he launched carried that moral dilemma. How much could he push Luffy without betraying his admiration and trust? Then came the decisive moment. Harry cast a complex binding spell, meant to immobilize without harm. Luffy, mid-stretch, froze for a split second, eyes narrowing. He grinned, but it was a different grin. Focused, calculated. Instead of evading, he allowed the spell to connect just enough to feel its effect, then twisted and stretched, turning the restriction into leverage. With a flick and a bounce, Luffy redirected the magical energy in a spectacular arc, sending a harmless but dazzling wave across the arena. The crowd erupted, a mixture of awe and excitement. Even Dumbledore, watching from the sidelines, let a small, knowing smile creep across his face. "Observe," He learns not from instruction, but from experience. Each test shapes him, and in turn, shapes those around him. Harry lowered his wand slightly, breathing hard. His mind raced with reflection. Luffy's freedom, his refusal to submit blindly to rules, was not chaotic. It was a different kind of logic, one that respected instinct, trust, and adaptability over structure. The duel was more than magic. It was a conversation of ideals. Hermione stepped forward, voice trembling slightly. He's teaching us, Harry, whether we realize it or not. The duel ended not with defeat, but with mutual acknowledgement. Luffy landed lightly, stretching back to his normal stance, grin wide and eyes sparkling with excitement. That was fun. You're awesome, Harry. Let's do it again sometime. Harry lowered his wand fully, conflicted but enlightened. He had been challenged not by force alone, but by philosophy, instinct, and unorthodox morality. The duel had tested the boundaries of magic, trust, and friendship simultaneously, and it had revealed something more profound than victory or loss. But outside the castle, forces stirred in response to the duel's energy. Dark wizards, sensing the surge of instinctive power and untrained magical resonance, began to converge. The question now loomed. Will Luffy's moral code hold when real danger strikes Hogwarts? Or will the rules of magic and the darkness closing in force him to bend in ways even he cannot predict? The castle corridors were quiet in the late afternoon, the soft echoes of footsteps blending with the rustling of parchment and distant laughter from the common rooms. But in one secluded tower room, the air was tense, alive with anticipation. Luffy sat cross-legged on the floor, bright blue backpack slung casually behind him, eyes wide as he studied a complex pattern of magical runes projected into the air by Professor McGonagall. "You see, Luffy," Dumbledore began, his voice calm yet filled with quiet authority, "magic is not only force. It is intention, focus, and understanding. You already possess instinct beyond ordinary comprehension, but magic can refine that instinct, give it precision." Luffy leaned back, scratching the top of his head. "Wow, so it's kind of like learning a new move, but with your mind?" His words, innocent and blunt, carried both curiosity and challenge. McGonagall raised an eyebrow. "Yes, in a way, but the difference is discipline. Magic demands respect. Impulsiveness alone will not suffice." Luffy grinned. I like the sound of that. Let's try it." And so began a series of lessons unlike any Hogwarts had ever seen. Unlike ordinary students, Luffy's learning was unpredictable. He bent, stretched, and moved with an energy that defied conventional technique. When asked to channel a simple light charm, he stretched his arms like elastic, accidentally scattering glowing orbs across the room. Yet each orb landed in perfect formation, illuminating the runes in a way no one had intended. Professor Snape, observing from the shadows, whispered to Dumbledore, "Remarkable. He does not follow the rules, yet achieves results that most trained wizards could not. But it is dangerous. His instinctive power may outpace his judgment." Hagrid, standing by the doorway with a sympathetic grin, added, "He's got heart, that one. Reckless, but true. If you guide him right, magic won't squash him. It'll lift him." The first major turning point arrived when Luffy attempted a defensive spell, instinctively mixing his own Haki-like reflexes with the incantation. A wave of shimmering energy erupted around him, a brilliant arc of light and motion that sent several nearby books tumbling. For a moment, the room held its breath. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Yes, precisely. You are discovering the synergy between instinct and magic. But remember, control is the key. Without it, power becomes chaos." Hermione, watching closely, whispered to Harry, "It's fascinating. He's not just learning spells. He's internalizing them in his own way. But I worry. If he goes too far, he could harm himself or others unintentionally. Luffy, oblivious to the caution, laughed as he bounced lightly on the balls of his feet. Whoa, it feels amazing. Like I'm stretching. But in my mind too. Despite the excitement, conflicts arose immediately. Luffy's impulsive nature clashed with the structured methods of the professors. Lessons that required repetition or precise incantation frustrated him. He often broke sequences, experimenting instead with creative but dangerous alternatives. McGonagall's patience wore thin, while Dumbledore's calm persistence never faltered. Your creativity is your strength, Luffy, Dumbledore said gently during one session, but magic will test your essence. Use it wisely, or you may find yourself changed in ways you do not desire. The revelation weighed on everyone present. Luffy's power was already extraordinary. Combining it with formal magical training could either elevate him to unprecedented heights or push him toward uncontrolled chaos. Even Snape, usually so critical, could not hide his intrigue. It is fascinating, he muttered. He is not learning in our way, yet adapts in ways none of us anticipate. As the lesson progressed, Luffy's movements began to harmonize with the spells around him. His instinctive attacks, stretches, and dodges were complemented by subtle enchantments. For the first time, magic seemed to dance with him rather than resist him, creating a fluid, dynamic form of power that astonished the observing professors. But even as progress was made, a quiet tension lingered in the room. The energy Luffy radiated was growing, unpredictable and potent. Each lesson was not only a step forward, but a subtle test of balance. Could his essence survive the refinement of magic? Or would it warp under forces he did not yet understand? As the day drew to a close, Luffy stood amidst floating runes and shimmering light, laughter echoing through the tower. Yet outside, shadows stirred. Forces beyond Hogwarts, dark and watchful, had sensed the surge of his growing power. The question loomed. Can magic enhance Luffy without corrupting the very essence that makes him extraordinary? Or will his next encounter push him into a danger even the professors cannot control? Night had fallen over Hogwarts, painting the castle in deep blues and silver shadows. While most students had retreated to their dormitories, Luffy wandered the corridors, curiosity leading him where even the bravest seldom dared. His small feet padded silently, backpack bouncing lightly, eyes wide for the thrill of discovery. Hogwarts had taught him lessons, yes, but instinct and adventure always whispered louder than rules. It was in a deserted corridor beneath the flickering light of enchanted sconces that Luffy first noticed it. A faint shimmer, a distortion in the shadows, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. His instincts flared, a sixth sense honed from endless battles and encounters across his own world, told him something was amiss. He leaned forward, stretching his arm through the darkness to probe the air, and felt it. A ripple of malicious energy. Familiar, yet alien. Something's weird, he murmured, grinning despite the unease curling in his stomach, like someone sneaking around, not just for fun. Meanwhile, Draco Malfoy was already weaving his web. The young Slytherin had sensed the growing attention on Luffy, both from Hogwarts students and external dark forces. He had begun playing a dangerous game, feeding snippets of information to both sides while keeping his own ambitions hidden. A hushed whisper here, a subtle warning there. His goal was clear: manipulate the chaos to his advantage, ensuring he could claim power when the dust settled. Careful, Draco muttered under his breath as he slinked through the shadows. He's stronger than anyone thinks. And the Dark Wizards. They're already watching. If I play this right, I can control the outcome. Or survive it at least. Luffy's path soon crossed with Hermione and Harry, who had been tracking unusual magical fluctuations themselves. Hermione's eyes widened when she saw him, sensing both excitement and danger radiating from the pirate. Luffy, you shouldn't be wandering alone. There's something here, something dangerous. Harry, wand raised, glanced around, his face tight with worry. He's right. I felt it too. Dark magic. Different from anything we've seen. And it's converging around you. The revelation hit Luffy with surprising clarity. For all his carefree energy, he had instincts that recognized danger immediately. Danger, huh? Sounds like fun, he said with a grin. Let's check it out. What they discovered shocked even the seasoned Hogwarts students. In a hidden chamber behind the library, traces of enchantments, older than the castle itself, intertwined with unfamiliar, almost alien energy. Energy that matched the resonance of devil fruit powers. Someone had been attempting to harness Luffy's interdimensional abilities for their own dark purposes. Protective wards flickered and shimmered as if sensing the intrusion, reacting violently to every misstep. Hermione's voice trembled as she surveyed the symbols etched in black magic. They're trying to replicate his power. If they succeed, she swallowed hard. They could unleash something we can't contain. Harry's jaw clenched. They've been planning this for a while. Luffy's arrival, it's more than coincidence. We're sitting on a potential catastrophe. As the trio debated their next move, Luffy's rubber-like instincts led him to investigate further, accidentally activating a trap that sent a series of enchanted spikes spiraling toward them. With instinctive reflexes, he stretched, bounced, and deflected the danger while shielding Hermione and Harry. The display was both breathtaking and terrifying, his natural abilities complemented by raw, magical chaos. Draco, watching from the shadows above, smirked. He understood the leverage at play. Luffy's abilities, Hogwarts' inexperienced students, and the looming threat from dark wizards. Everything's coming together, and soon, neither side will have control. The turning point came when a sudden, deep ripple of energy pulsed through the castle, an unmistakable sign that the conspirators outside Hogwarts had sensed Luffy's presence. A chill wind swept through the corridors, extinguishing torches and rattling windows. Hogwarts itself seemed to hold its breath. Luffy's grin faltered for the first time. Whoa, that's big, he admitted, stretching his arms instinctively, ready for action. Looks like they want to play. I like big challenges. Hermione grabbed his arm, urgency in her eyes. This isn't a game, Luffy. If they get him, if they capture your power, Hogwarts won't survive. Harry tightened his grip on his wand, stepping protectively in front of Luffy. We can't let this happen. Not here, not now. Outside the castle walls, dark forces gathered, whispers of devil fruit power, spreading like wildfire among followers of Voldemort. Within Hogwarts, a web of manipulation, ambition, and curiosity twisted tighter, and at the center of it all, Luffy, blissfully unaware, yet instinctively prepared, faced a choice. Confront the threat head-on, or risk letting his abilities fall into the hands of those who would wield them for unimaginable destruction. The question hung in the cold night air. Is Hogwarts ready for a full-scale magical pirate conflict, or has the storm only just begun? The wind howled across the towers of Hogwarts, carrying with it the distant clatter of enchanted wings and the low hum of dark magic seeping from the forbidden forest. Luffy stood atop the highest parapet, backpack bouncing slightly as he surveyed the grounds below. His usual carefree grin was tempered with a flicker of thoughtfulness, a rare weight settling across his shoulders. Tonight, instinct whispered that the quiet before the storm had ended. Below, Harry and Hermione were coordinating students and magical creatures, centaurs and house elves alike, preparing for the unknown. Even Hagrid moved with unusual urgency, guiding creatures who sensed the brewing danger. Luffy's presence had already shifted Hogwarts' rhythm. The castle no longer felt like a safe haven. It was on a battlefield waiting to ignite. Luffy, Harry called up, voice tight with concern. They're coming. We don't know how many, or how strong. You've got to decide. Will you fight with us? Luffy's black dot eyes scanned the horizon, flicking to the shadows among the trees, where faint silhouettes of dark wizards and unknown creatures gathered. For the first time since arriving, he hesitated. The thrill of adventure clashed with the responsibility that had grown alongside new friendships. On one side, the promise of returning home, a world of seas, islands, and freedom. On the other, the faces of students who had laughed, argued, and shared lessons with him, and creatures who had come to trust him instinctively. I don't know, he admitted aloud, scratching his head. I've always wanted to go wherever I want, do whatever I want. But these people, he gestured toward the dormitories, the courtyard, the forest where allies had taken position. I kinda like them. Hermione's voice softened, carrying both encouragement and urgency. Luffy, the choice isn't about what you want. It's about what the world needs. And right now, Hogwarts needs you. Your abilities, your instincts. You can make a difference. Draco Malfoy, watching from a shadowed turret across the grounds, smiled faintly. How noble, he whispered to himself. Or foolish. One reckless choice, and the entire school becomes a battlefield. The first ripple of the attack struck, a barrage of curses propelled by unseen hands, scattering leaves and tossing students off their feet. Luffy's rubbery body sprang into action automatically, stretching, bouncing, and deflecting blows with instinctive precision. Each movement was fluid, almost dance-like, a chaotic harmony of power and strategy. Hogwarts' magical wards flared in response, but they alone could not repel the oncoming assault. Harry and Hermione fought alongside him, their spells layered with coordination and ingenuity. But it was Luffy's presence, the unbound, elastic unpredictability, that began turning the tide. Magical energy clashed against his Haki-like reflexes, and every attack he absorbed or redirected seemed to bolster the morale of those around him. Yet, even in the midst of chaos, a deeper struggle persisted. Luffy's internal conflict was palpable. He could feel the pull of his own world, the freedom of the sea calling him back. But the bonds he had formed, the laughter of students, the trust of magical creatures, the quiet pride of Dumbledore watching from afar, anchored him in a way he had never experienced. His instincts, normally guided purely by survival and curiosity, now grappled with loyalty and conscience. Then came the decisive moment. A massive curse, unlike any previously encountered, surged toward the courtyard, threatening to engulf both students and creatures in its dark energy. Time seemed to stretch. Luffy's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, his grin was steady, resolute, not playful, but purposeful. I'm not running this time, he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. With a deep breath, he launched himself forward, stretching and twisting, each movement precise, yet unpredictable, channeling both his devil fruit instincts and the fledgling magical understanding he had begun to grasp. The dark energy collided with him, twisting and exploding in a wave of light and elastic motion, shielding everyone in a protective cocoon of chaotic brilliance. The immediate threat dissipated, but the echoes of the attack lingered. Students looked on in awe, creatures stirred with alert caution, and even the shadows seemed to hesitate, recalculating their approach. Hogwarts had survived, for now, but at a cost. Luffy had made his choice. Standing amid the aftermath, Luffy stretched out a hand toward the castle, eyes shining. He had chosen to defend this world, to sacrifice the simplicity of a stranger's journey for the lives of those he had grown to care for. But in the distance, beyond the grounds, a deeper, more calculated darkness watched, waiting for a moment when even Luffy's unshakable instinct and newfound magical synergy might not be enough. The question loomed heavy. Can a pirate, free in body and spirit, truly protect a world bound by rules he barely understands? Or will the next choice demand a cost greater than anyone anticipates? The first streaks of lightning cut across the sky above Hogwarts, illuminating the towers in stark flashes. The distant rumble of thunder was drowned out by a roar that seemed to vibrate through the castle stones themselves. From the forbidden forest, shadows surged forward. Dark wizards riding twisted magical beasts, their cloaks fluttering like wings of despair, eyes glinting with anticipation. Tonight, the school that had stood for centuries was under siege. Luffy stood on the battlements, backpack snug on his shoulders, eyes alight with that familiar mix of excitement and resolve. Around him, students readied wands, centaurs drew bows, and Hagrid roared instructions to his charges. The clash of worlds, the chaotic unpredictability of a pirate, and the disciplined defense of Hogwarts was about to unfold in full. A sudden burst of energy struck the outer wall. A massive magical beast, serpentine and scaled, crashed through enchanted wards, scattering debris and sending students scrambling. Luffy sprang forward instinctively, stretching his arm across the courtyard, curling it around the creature like a living whip. He hurled it away, the force amplified by his elastic momentum, sending it crashing into a distant turret. The students cheered, but the battle was only beginning. Harry and Hermione fought beside him, spells weaving through the air like glowing ribbons. But Luffy's chaotic style was unlike anything they had seen. He darted, bounced, and twisted with uncanny timing, not merely reacting, but anticipating movements, as if the battlefield itself obeyed his instinct. Each enemy attack that came toward the students was deflected or absorbed, often in ways that seemed reckless, yet precise. "This is amazing!" Hermione shouted, ducking a curse aimed at her. "He's not just defending, he's orchestrating." Draco Malfoy, watching from a shadowed balcony, smirked. "So the pirate's power is real, but does he have limits, or weaknesses we can exploit?" The first major turning point arrived when a squad of dark wizards unleashed a coordinated barrage of curses, targeting Luffy and Harry simultaneously. The air crackled with energy, lighting the courtyard with pulses of destructive light. Luffy, sensing the danger, leaped high, arms stretching to catch multiple spells at once. He bent, twisted, and ricocheted the magical blasts back toward their source with precision that even seasoned wizards could not match. The counterattack created confusion among the invaders. Their coordinated strike fractured, leaving gaps that Hogwarts' defenders exploited. Students and creatures worked in tandem with Luffy's unpredictable movements, creating a synergy that was both improvised and devastating. Even Hagrid's massive companions found new purpose, inspired by the pirate's audacity and the subtle guidance of Dumbledore's strategic oversight. Yet, amidst the awe and chaos, tension simmered. Luffy's powers, while incredible, were not limitless. Each stretch, each ricochet of magical energy drained his stamina in ways even he did not fully understand. Meanwhile, the dark wizards adapted quickly, unleashing curses infused with protective wards and counterspells designed to neutralize instinctive attacks. Hogwarts' defenses, no matter how clever or enchanted, were under real threat of being overrun. In the center of the courtyard, Harry called out, panting, "Luffy, they're regrouping. More coming from the east towers." Luffy's grin returned, wild and determined. "Huh. Then let's make this fun." He lunged forward, stretching across the courtyard in impossible angles, smashing the incoming force of dark magic while shielding clusters of students. Each movement became a blur, an extension of his Haki-like instincts entwined with the basic magical lessons he had absorbed. He was no longer just a student of Hogwarts or a visitor from another world. He had become a bridge between chaos and discipline, instinct and learned magic. The emotional hook intensified when he glanced at the students around him, some terrified, some exhilarated. Their trust in him had grown, fragile but steadfast. Luffy realized in that fleeting instant that these weren't just allies. They were friends he could not abandon. And as the dark forces pressed forward, relentless and calculating. He understood the stakes in a way that even the thrill of adventure had never prepared him for. Just as Luffy launched another counterattack, a massive pulse of dark energy exploded from the forest edge, knocking him off his feet and sending debris flying in every direction. The courtyard shook violently, magical wards flickered, and the shadows of towering, unseen entities loomed on the horizon. Hogwarts was on the brink of total siege, and even Luffy's incredible instincts might not be enough to survive what was coming next. The question lingered in every heart. Can a pirate's chaotic genius truly withstand the full fury of a coordinated magical onslaught? The air over Hogwarts crackled with tension. Smoke curled from scorched stone, and the smell of charred magic lingered, heavy and metallic. The siege was no longer merely a test of skill. It had become a trial of hearts, of courage, and of the bonds that could either unite or shatter under pressure. Luffy stood atop the astronomy tower, backpack bouncing slightly as he scanned the courtyard below. Students scattered in defensive formations, some wounded, others trembling with fear, yet refusing to retreat. In the distance, dark wizards coordinated with uncanny precision, their sinister intent clear. But there was something new tonight. Luffy could feel it, the heartbeat of Hogwarts itself, pulsing in resonance with the bravery of those around him. He took a deep breath, stretching his arm in a lazy, almost careless motion. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "You guys can do this. Show me what you've got." The students hesitated, their confidence fractured by the overwhelming force of the assault. Then, something remarkable happened. Harry, Hermione, and even reluctant Slytherins like Draco found a spark of resolve. They realized that Luffy's confidence wasn't reckless. It was contagious. In that instant, they tapped into reserves of potential that had lain dormant, guided not just by instruction, but by belief in each other and the stranger who had become their unlikely ally. Luffy didn't fight alone anymore. Every spell, every defensive maneuver synchronized subtly with his elastic movements, creating a rhythm that transformed chaos into orchestrated strategy. He intercepted curses mid-flight, redirecting them with precision that seemed almost prescient, while students amplified their own magic, exploiting the openings he created. Even the youngest wizards discovered strengths they had never imagined, inspired by his unshakable determination. The first key duel unfolded near the Great Hall. Draco faced a dark wizard, wand shaking in his hand, fear etched on his pale face. Luffy's voice carried to him. "Trust yourself. Stretch out and don't hold back." With a deep inhale, Draco unleashed a flurry of spells that struck with unexpected accuracy, forcing his opponent to retreat. It was a fleeting moment, but it ignited a chain reaction. Students who had doubted themselves now fought with the confidence that had been missing from the beginning. Meanwhile, Luffy's own abilities began to evolve under the pressure. His instincts, Haki-like, honed from countless battles on the seas, merged almost seamlessly with the basic magical principles he had absorbed. He could sense threats before they materialized, perceive intent behind curses, and act with a fluidity that blurred the lines between instinct and strategy. Each stretch, each ricochet of magical energy, protected allies and punished adversaries in ways that left even seasoned professors awestruck. Yet, the emotional stakes were high. Loyalty and friendship were tested in every encounter. A student faltered, hesitating in the heat of combat, and Luffy extended his arm, not just to intercept a curse, but to catch them, pulling them back into the fight. "I've got you," he shouted, eyes burning with sincerity. That single act rekindled courage in every heart that had wavered, reinforcing the fragile alliances that had begun to form under siege. The turning point came when a colossal wave of dark magic surged from the forest, larger and more coordinated than anything before. Luffy launched himself into the storm, stretching impossibly, redirecting energy, shielding clusters of students while simultaneously breaking enemy lines. The courtyard became a blur of movement. spells colliding with elastic force, dark energy ricocheting against both magic and instinct. It was clear, Hogwarts was not just holding its ground, it was thriving under the chaos. But the strain was immense. Luffy's body, despite its resilience, showed signs of fatigue. His arms trembled from repeated extension, his movements slightly slower than moments ago. The students, while emboldened, faced opponents who were adapting just as quickly, escalating in ferocity and cunning. Just as a momentary calm swept the courtyard, a shadow detached itself from the mass of dark forces, a figure radiating raw, almost tangible power, its presence warping the air around it. Luffy's eyes narrowed, and even the students felt a chill crawl up their spines. This was no ordinary enemy. Every instinct screamed that the final confrontation was near, and the question hung heavy in the night. Could the bonds of friendship and the unpredictable force of Haki withstand the true power that had just arrived? The battlefield was a storm of chaos, shattered stone and arcs of magical energy streaking across the night sky. Hogwarts had become a crucible, where instincts and intellect, magic and devil fruit power, collided with explosive intensity. At the center of it all, Luffy faced the figure who had orchestrated this assault, the Dark Leader, whose presence radiated an aura so suffocating that even the bravest students instinctively stepped back. The figure hovered above the courtyard, robes rippling like smoke in a hurricane of arcane energy. Eyes glinting with malice, he unleashed a wave of dark magic that tore through the battlements. Spells ricocheted wildly, sparks and shards of stone flying in every direction. Luffy's body reacted instantly, stretching and twisting midair to absorb the force, his instincts and Haki-like perception guiding every move. The air vibrated with the collision of two utterly different but equally formidable powers. Harry stood beside him, wand ready, pulse racing. "Luffy, we need to coordinate," he shouted over the roar of destruction. "This isn't just about strength, it's about precision, timing, and trust." Luffy grinned, bouncing lightly on the courtyard floor, rubbery limbs coiling and uncoiling with barely contained energy. "Got it! You handle the magic stuff. I'll handle the chaotic stuff." And with that, he launched himself at the leader, arms extending like elastic spears, deflecting curses while simultaneously smashing through enchanted constructs. Each strike was a blend of raw instinct and creative improvisation, bending physics in a way that Hogwarts' defenders had never seen. The Dark Leader countered, unleashing a torrent of curses fused with protective enchantments designed to predict and counter Luffy's movements. For the first time, the pirate's grin faltered. His instincts told him to keep going, but the magnitude of power before him pressed on his senses like a tidal wave. Even his Haki-like perception had limits, and the sheer complexity of the enemy's magical manipulations tested the boundaries of everything he had learned in mere weeks at Hogwarts. Meanwhile, Harry's spells interwove with Luffy's attacks. Fireballs, levitating barriers, and shockwaves synchronized with elastic strikes, creating openings that neither could achieve alone. Every misstep could spell disaster, yet each successful coordination reinforced the unspoken bond growing between them. The students watched from cover, awe and fear mingling as two worlds, pirate instinct and wizarding discipline, merged into a form of combat entirely unprecedented. The turning point came when the Dark Leader unleashed a spell that warped reality itself, a twisting vortex of shadow energy that threatened to engulf the courtyard. Luffy instinctively stretched his arms wide, launching himself into the eye of the storm. Harry followed, directing spells with surgical precision. Their combined efforts stabilized the vortex momentarily, giving Hogwarts' defenders a chance to regroup. The courtyard shook violently, and debris rained down like hail. But the alliance held. Yet, even as the tide seemed to shift, doubt crept in. Could Luffy's body endure this strain? Could magic and instinct remain synchronized under such extreme pressure? Every stretch, every ricochet, every spell fired in tandem drew from reserves that were already stretched thin. and the enemy's eyes gleamed with the knowledge that they were facing a force that might push itself beyond human or even magical limits. Then came the revelation. The Dark Leader's spells were reacting to Luffy's devil fruit energy in ways no one had predicted. Each clash amplified both sides, creating a feedback loop of destructive potential that threatened to tear the castle apart. Luffy's grin returned, fierce and determined. All right, time to go all out. He drew on every ounce of instinct, willpower, and emerging magical understanding. His arms flew faster, his strikes more precise, each movement an improvisation that blurred the line between defense and offense. Just as Luffy launched what could have been the decisive strike, the ground beneath him cracked violently. A shadow deeper than any he had faced emerged from the rift. Something ancient, intelligent, and utterly malevolent. Hogwarts trembled, the sky darkened further, and even Harry felt a chill he couldn't shake. The ultimate trial had arrived. Could a pirate armed with Haki and fledgling magic truly withstand the full fury of this force? Or would the very foundations of Hogwarts crumble under the weight of a world-altering confrontation? The dawn broke over Hogwarts with an eerie stillness, as if the castle itself was taking a deep breath after the storm. The siege had ended, but its echoes lingered in every corridor, every shattered window, every scorched stone. Smoke rose lazily from the battlements, curling into the pale morning sky, a reminder of the chaos that had nearly consumed the school. Students and professors alike wandered through the aftermath, a mixture of relief and awe etched on their faces. Gryffindors clutched each other, cheering in quiet, cautious celebration. Slytherins exchanged wary glances, their ambitions tempered by the sheer display of power they had witnessed. Even the staff, exhausted yet vigilant, knew that the battle had altered Hogwarts permanently, magically, politically, and ideologically. Luffy sat atop the remains of a shattered tower railing, his legs dangling, bright blue backpack slung lazily over one shoulder. His round eyes scanned the courtyard, taking in the aftermath with an unusual seriousness. He had fought not for treasure or glory, but for people who were, until a few weeks ago, strangers. And yet, the experience had changed him as much as it had changed them. Not bad. Not bad at all, muttered Hagrid from below, his enormous form leaning against a ruined statue. You've done something no one here could have imagined, Luffy. Hogwarts, she's alive because of you. Luffy grinned, scratching the back of his head. I just did what felt right. Guess everyone pulling together helped more than me. But even in his casual tone, a flicker of reflection passed over his face. He felt the weight of the power he wielded, the responsibility he had borne in this strange, magical world. Down below, Harry and Hermione approached cautiously. Harry's wand was still warm from the last duel, and Hermione's robes were singed in several places. You know, Harry said quietly, you weren't just lucky out there. You understand teamwork in a way we didn't expect. And not just teamwork, the way you trust people. That changed us too, Hermione added, her voice soft but firm. But Luffy, you need to understand. The Ministry, the magical world outside Hogwarts, they'll want answers. They'll want to know what you are, and some of them may see you as a threat rather than a friend. Luffy's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Threat? Me? His tone carried the innocence of someone who had only ever chased adventure, not political power, but beneath that playful expression was a dawning realization. This world was far more complex than the seas he knew. There were consequences here he had yet to understand. The castle shook subtly, as if acknowledging that the battle's energy hadn't fully dissipated. Magical runes, warped by the intersecting forces of devil fruit power and Hogwarts spells, glimmered faintly along the walls. Some students whispered in awe. Knowledge, spells, and even fragments of interdimensional energy had seeped into the castle, leaving traces of something new, something unpredictable. Dumbledore appeared silently beside Luffy, his long robes brushing the stone floor. His eyes, sharp yet gentle, reflected both pride and concern. Lewis, or should I say, Luffy, he began, voice calm yet carrying weight. You have done more than save lives. You have opened doors, doors that perhaps should remain closed, and yet now cannot be closed. The balance of magic, and perhaps reality itself, has shifted. Luffy tilted his head, confused yet attentive. Shifted? Like the sea after a storm? Dumbledore smiled faintly, a shadow of amusement in his eyes. Perhaps like that, and yet far more profound. There are forces beyond our understanding now watching Hogwarts. Forces that may see you not as a student, not as a friend, but as a catalyst, a wild card. In the courtyard, whispers began among the students. Interdimensional powers, strange abilities unlike any they had seen, rumors of devil fruit energy mingling with magic. Some were exhilarated, eager to explore the possibilities. Others were wary, uneasy about the implications. The wizarding world outside Hogwarts would not remain ignorant for long. Even Draco, observing from a safe distance, felt a flicker of unease. Ambition warred with fear in his chest. He had witnessed raw, uncontrolled potential that could not be tamed by politics alone. Luffy, sensing the subtle tension, stretched his arm lazily and yawned. Well, guess things are different now, huh? But beneath his carefree demeanor, he knew the adventure wasn't over. Something larger, more dangerous, lurked on the horizon. Something that might test his bonds, his ideals, and the very limits of his abilities. And as the sun climbed higher over the castle, a ripple of strange energy shimmered along the lake, far below the walls of Hogwarts. A faint, almost imperceptible pulse of power that resonated with Luffy's own devil fruit energy. A new chapter loomed, unseen and unpredictable. The world had changed. The question now remained, could Hogwarts and Luffy himself survive what came next? The sun set over Hogwarts, painting the castle in hues of gold and crimson, casting long shadows across the courtyard where laughter and cautious celebration mingled with lingering tension. The battle was over, the dark forces vanquished, and yet an intangible weight lingered in the air. The world had shifted, subtly but irreversibly, and at the heart of this new reality stood a single figure, a pirate who had become a legend in a world that was never his own. Luffy leaned casually against the remnants of a courtyard wall, the familiar blue of his backpack bright against the dying light. Around him, students gathered, faces lit with admiration, curiosity, and something heavier, the unspoken acknowledgement that they had shared something extraordinary. Gryffindors, Slytherins, and even hesitant Hufflepuffs had come together, inspired by his chaotic courage. Hermione's eyes, sharp and yet soft, met his, carrying gratitude, worry, and a question that had hovered for days. What would he do now? Dumbledore approached quietly, robes brushing against the stone, his gaze serene yet probing. Luffy, he began, voice low enough that only those near him could hear. You have touched the lives of these students in ways we could scarcely predict. And you have glimpsed truths beyond your world. Yet the choice remains yours. Will you return to your seas, or will you explore the currents of magic that now flow through your life? Luffy's round eyes blinked slowly, scanning the horizon where the castle met the twilight sky. His mouth twisted into a grin, not of certainty, but of thought. The seas, they're my home. My crew's out there waiting, and there's treasure, adventure, all kinds of stuff I haven't even imagined yet. He stretched his arm lazily, the familiar elasticity, a reminder of everything that made him Luffy. But this place, he continued, glancing back at the castle. You guys aren't so bad either. Magic's weird, confusing, but fun. And You know, you folks actually fight like a team. That's kinda cool. Harry stepped forward, wand lowered, but heart pounding. You've changed us, Luffy. You've taught us to see beyond rules, to trust instincts, to fight not just with power, but with heart. If you leave, some of that might fade. Hermione added softly. Magic is a journey, and so is life. But some choices, they define everything. Whatever you decide, it will echo far beyond Hogwarts. For a moment, Luffy said nothing. The courtyard was quiet, save for the soft murmurs of students, the distant rustle of leaves, and the faint shimmer of residual magical energy still dancing across the battlements. The world seemed to hold its breath. He thought of his crew, their laughter, their struggles, the endless horizon of the sea. But then he thought of the friends he had made here, the bonds he had formed, the chaos and joy and responsibility he had encountered. A sudden sound, a distant ripple across the lake, reminded him of the interdimensional energy that had followed him here, the lingering threat, and the unknown adventures still possible. He realized that his journey was no longer just about the seas or the rules of the world he had entered. It was about choice, about defining who he was beyond labels, beyond worlds. Finally, he looked around at Hogwarts one last time, at the faces of students who had cheered for him, challenged him, and trusted him. He grinned, wide and unapologetic, yet carrying the weight of decision. All right, he said, voice carrying across the courtyard. I've got a choice, and I think I know what I want to do, but it's not about me alone. I'll go where the adventure is, where people need a hand or a punch. He stretched his arms wide, his silhouette framed against the last light of the day, tension and anticipation gripping every onlooker. Students and professors alike waited, holding their breath, as the pirate's fate balanced on the edge of possibility. And then Luffy stepped forward, not toward the castle gates, nor toward the lake, but into the unknown shimmer of energy that pulsed faintly in the twilight. The interdimensional currents of possibilities swirling around him. Hogwarts had changed. The seas of One Piece awaited, and the collision of worlds was far from over. Where would the pirate go? What adventures? What dangers? What alliances awaited in a universe forever altered by a single blue backpacked stranger? The answer would decide the fate of more than one world.